Hi, everyone. We lead such busy lives that the chance to automate anything seems to help alleviate the pressure, no? Seriously, I mean, if we know that as soon as the alarm clock rings, the coffee brews and the Instapot starts dinner, doesn't that make our lives seem a bit more manageable? And just frankly, how many of us seemed just a little bit happier last week when it seemed that the robots we had been talking about for 2 generations just might be coming off the assembly line and into our homes and schools real soon to help automate home tasks and child rearing, only later to have our hopes dashed when they turned out to be only ideas in clouds fueled by local smoke and mirrors. Yes, sometimes we do crave autopilot. Sometimes we create it. In fact, Chazal tell us that although not necessarily an ideal, mitzvos, einam tzrichos kavana, mitzvos do not need the proper advanced intent, and if they were informed and performed without the necessary intention, we still get the credit for the performance of the mitzvah. That's almost always the case. A notable exception, oddly as it may seem, is the mitzvah of sukkah. Why sukkah? The poskim note that since the Torah notes "Laman yedeu dorosechem ki basukos hoshafti es bnei Yisrael ba'otzio sam eretz Mitzrayim," so that the future generations will know that I housed bnei Yisrael in the sukkah, we need to make sure that we have proper kavana when we go into the sukkah. Which raises the question as to what the proper kavana is. The Talmud debates as to whether the mitzvah refers to actual dwellings of the people or to the ananei hakavod, the clouds of glory that guided them as a nation. It certainly might help to know what we recall when we do the mitzvah, but now we find out it's a machlokes. How does that make any sense? Moreover, Rav Avram Danzig, the author of the Chayei Adam, and the Rokeach as well, both note that the intention of Sukkah must also refer to the tents that soldiers lived in at the time of the conquering of the land and the battle with Sichon Melech HaEmori, not just to days of old. Now, how does their approach fit with the intention of the Talmud? And which intention is the proper one to keep when we enter our Sukkah? Perhaps an interesting comment of the Al Shach might prove useful here. He introduces the idea with a story about the Rambam. It's well known that the Rambam was a world renowned doctor who was charged with the responsibility of treating and keeping the health of the Sultan of Egypt. Rambam's fame as a healer spread. The people would come far and wide to even seek even a brief consultation with him for their medical problems. However, given Rambam's busy schedule, he'd only be available for the masses as he walked to the Sultan's palace, and thus became a well-known practice for those seeking his medical acumen to line up on both sides of the road between the Rambam's house and the Sultan's palace. And as the Rambam passed, he'd look at each person, the sitting, the bedridden, and those being held up by family members, and he would offer medical advice on the spot. It was quite well known that if the Rambam said nothing as he passed you, he thought that there was nothing he could do to help. And one day on his way to the palace, the Rambam saw a person who, at least on the surface, appeared healthy. Who are you? And why do you stand among the sick? The Rambam asked the man. I'm a Malamed. I'm a school teacher, the man replied. And until recently, everything was great. Until recently, when a new teacher came to town and took my job, the man responded. So then why are you standing out among the sick? The Rambam asked. I know that the sick people who couldn't eat, sleep, or drink due to their illness have come here, and you've been able to help them, said the man. I also can't eat, sleep, and drink. So tell me what I need to do in order to be able to do the same, came the man's response. Do you know why you can't eat and sleep or drink? The Rambam asked him. Sure, the man said. When that other teacher took my job, I don't have the means to be able to eat and to drink because I don't have enough money to pay for it. I can't sleep because of the anxiety and the stress that worrying about my wife and kids brings me. And so the Rambam told him that if he would just do the following, he would find the proper medicine he sought. Get a pumpkin, the Rambam told him. Prepare it so that it'll be preserved in its fresh state for a long time and hide it in a secure location. Do this, the Rambam told him, and you will become wealthy. Now, the teacher didn't fully get the instructions, but he did exactly as the Rambam told him. He preserved and hid the pumpkin and awaited his impending wealth. Well, 5 months went by and nothing happened. And in his heart, he thought that the Rambam was joking. But a small part of him just didn't want to give up on that little bit of hope that he had. And so he left the pumpkin alone. Now, towards the coldest part of the winter, the Sultan got very sick. The Rambam was summoned to the palace to diagnose and treat him. And the Rambam told the house staff at the palace that the only thing that the king could get help from was a fresh pumpkin, as if recently harvested from the summer. The staff wondered where they'd get such a prize at this point of year. A tremendous flurry of action immediately followed, and word went out that whomever could produce the necessary pumpkin would be treated as if he saved the Sultan's life. Our friend the teacher heard about the need and figured that since he himself didn't need the pumpkin anymore, as it wasn't making him wealthy, he might as well give it to the Sultan. And so he did. But the Sultan's health improved. And as a reward, he offered the teacher anything he wished for. The teacher, sensing the opportunity that after 2 years of waiting, requested his big grand request. He wanted the right to be given exclusive rights to teach for the entire area. No other teachers would ever be able to teach. The Sultan's health was so well, and now all of a sudden he stopped and looked at him astonished. I'm sorry, he said to the man, but at my greatest moment of happiness, how can I make someone else sad by taking away his ability to live based on his talent? I can't take away somebody else's job. At least not today, said the Sultan. Our friend the Malamed, the teacher, heard the Sultan's story and left the palace pretty sad. And so he returned to his spot in line between the Rambam's home and the palace, and the next day told the Rambam that the Rambam's prescription bore no fruit. After asking what happened, the Rambam scolded him. Why didn't you ask for $1 million? That the king would have gladly given you. It would not have come at a cost to somebody else's happiness in his job. Recognizing the fact of his error, the man was now crestfallen. Well, the Rambam gave him solace. Don't worry, he told him. Next year at this time, the Sultan will again recall how he got well and will make another party. Go back, and this time request the money like I told you. The Alshach continues with his moral to the story that one needs to choose the proper time to make a proper request. If it's a time of joy, then this is the time to make joyous requests. If it's time of power, then that's the time to make requests that are a bit more on the power move side. And the Tzaddik of Graz, Rav Elia Gutmacher, added that in regard to Sukkos, and the Sukkot, which are a reminder of the Ananei HaKavod, the heavenly clouds that protected us from the nations of the world, knowing and stressing that this is a time of protection that comes at this time of the year, will inspire one who's aware to daven for personal and national protection. And maybe that's why the Torah highlights the need that future generations need to know. We need to know that at this point in time, we were protected. In the past, in the Midbar, in the earlier times with Yaakov Avinu and Sukkot, and again as we entered Eretz Yisrael. And just as we know that it was a time of protection in the past, it will be a time of protection for us now as well. If we take the time to be aware, we will offer the time to pray. And then we can hope that Hashem will hear us and make sure that we will be included among those on whom we will daven. Ufro Salenu Sukkot Shlomo, that he shall put forth his sheltering tabernacle of peace over all of us. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make sure that it'll be a Sukkot Shalem, a complete sukkah, one that will keep us all protected and give us all a place to dwell with him completely. Wishing you and yours a Chag Sameach and a Shabbat Shalom to